The Indigenous People Psy, brought to you by everyone's favorite freak of nature, the uh, the man who's producing the most crazy, insane interpretations of our world and the craziest solutions. Oh, I am too humble. Call me Chief or Chef Crazy Head. At least people should be coming to listen for those reasons. The craziest stuff on the internet, on YouTube. I dare them, send invitations out to more people. We got to get more views for my crazy stuff. Well, let us begin. What is the indigenous psyop? It's the concerted effort by the education and media controllers, not to mention the history writers, to create division between indigenous people and non-indigenous people. This division feeds the blame game. Indigenous people blame non-indigenous people for the suffering of indigenous people and ignore the suffering of non-indigenous people. And non-indigenous people blame indigenous people for their own suffering and ignore the nearly identical suffering of their non-indigenous neighbors. Granted, alcoholism and domestic violence rates are higher among indigenous people, but this isn't a pissing contest. There's more than enough suffering in all ethnic groups. So we really should work together, especially because we have our enemies in common, the ruling class and ourselves, because we voluntarily support the ruling class by paying taxes to them and by buying the trash from which they profit. And let's stop creating division by deploying words such as indigenous, non-indigenous, colonial, post-colonial, privileged, white, brown, black, and so on. We are all indigenous to this earth. And if Europeans migrated, it was not because they had wonderful lives in Europe, were rich and greedy for more land and more wealth. Not the ordinary Europeans. Even the history we are given disproves that narrative, and we must learn to question all the history we are given, including these common historical claims. Indigenous peoples of the Americas arrived in the Americas thousands of years ago from their original land. Two indigenous people of the Americas were decimated by disease. And three, both rich and poor Europeans genocided American natives. These so-called truths must be examined. And I think there are reasons, and I will present reasons for doubting these commonly accepted claims mostly founded on books written by guess who? Yes, Europeans, not my ancestors. Even the folklore, the so-called oral traditions of native peoples could have been invented from scratch. Their culture could have been manufactured from nothing, just as cultures around the world are being influenced and manufactured as I speak. Finally, before I begin presenting evidence and analyses, let's acknowledge that the global economy exploits all ethnic groups and is driving everyone into poverty and misery, even though Mother Nature is waiting for us to develop her potential to provide us with more wealth, health, and happiness than any adrenochrome injecting jet set multi-billionaire parasite has ever known. I want to examine a few news stories, not very old ones. Let's have a look at this one from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Story about a young Indigenous woman, a trans woman, is that right? Trans man, whatever, uh, who was shot. Uh, Not sure when, but this is news from this year. Notice the important word here, the weasel word. Stereotypes may have factored into police shooting of Ojibwe teen. Inquest hears. May have. You know, we can't write stories like this. My brother may have killed his grandmother. Yeah, put that in the news. Well, that would maybe ruin his reputation. But we do it commonly. They do it commonly with the police. But questions, we need to ask questions. This young Ojibwe person doesn't strike me as particularly Ojibwe looking. No offense, good looking person, but really, is that the Ojibwe look? Um, there's a second article and video. Let's have a look. Um, the young person was the driver of a stolen car and was with other youths who had just robbed a liquor store, allegedly. Um, let's have a listen. Aisha Hudson was 16 when she was killed by a Winnipeg police officer, shot following a chase in a stolen car that ended here in April 2020. April 2020, this year, I guess. Um, this is the scene afterwards. Somehow the car was forced onto the median. There's no police car behind, and yet there's one in front. Yes, to stop them from going further, I suppose. After some of the other teens she was with robbed a liquor store, Manitoba's police watchdog recommended no charges against the constable who shot her, in part because an expert said that officer's use of force was justified. But in court this week, the inquest into Hudson's death heard a different use of force expert who disagreed with that assessment. Peter Rampat said responding officers put themselves at risk by not following safety protocols. And in his opinion, the shooting was not justified. That finding was based in part on this witness video that shows the moments after Hudson. There's the witness video. Very unclear, given the good phone cameras we have nowadays. Crashed, which court heard the earlier assessment didn't consider. Rampat says the video shows both shots were fired as the vehicle was backing up. He said that contradicts. I don't see any shots or evidence of the car backing up. Are we looking at the wrong video? Fire. Well, there are reasons for doubt, no doubt. Strangely, no one's asking, no one in the media is asking why a 16-year-old youth was helping peers steal alcohol. Why is there such an alcohol problem on our reservations, allegedly? Um, and no one dares to ask if the alcohol pushing Manitoba government is culpable for encouraging alcohol use. I don't care if you're adult or not. This is not something the government should be pushing, profiting from. Um, Curiously, I have doubts that this entire story has any truth to it. The whole thing, I suspect, was staged on a largely empty street. Um, the young lady's name, Aisha, um, was derived from the Arabic, slightly different spelling, same pronunciation. And that name, very funny, these Freemasons or whoever is making up these names of imaginary people. Her name means living, alive. You get the joke, yeah? She was shot dead, but her name means living, alive. Her last name is Hudson. It's a little difficult to trace, but it seems to be derived in part from the name Hugh, which means mind, thought, spirit. How perfect is that for a native person? Um, Now, of course, the question might arise if the powers that should not be are inventing tragic news stories about anyone, but in this case, Indigenous peoples of Canada's Manitoba province. Wouldn't other Ojibwe people catch on and question, hey, that we don't know any such person. We don't know anyone who died, was shot recently. Well, how could they pull this off? Well, there are nearly 30 distinct reserves, Ojibwe reserves in Manitoba. Um, would they call each other and say, hey, did you lose someone? Probably not. No, people believe the news, especially when they want to believe it. And they do want to believe it. They want to believe they are victims. Who doesn't want to believe they're a victim? Not when there's something to be gained from it, and they do gain. Next story, this one from the US. Again, I suspect the story is entirely fabricated. This photograph is fabricated, most likely. There's no such woman ever held up this framed, very large photograph of her son. Her name is rather special, Vanji, Randall Shorty. And her son's name is Zachariah. He was shot by other indigenous people. I think they call them American natives in the US. Well, this is curious because the name Zachariah is a name that appears in the Bible. It identifies one of the 12 minor prophets, well, one of the Jewish prophets. And it so happens that Zechariah is the one prophet who had an actual relationship with an angel and saw the most angels. Isn't that curious? Since His mother's name, Vanji, seems to be a variation, derivation from Angie or angel. Ah, an imaginary, of course. Angels are imaginary, and these Jewish prophets are imaginary. So, yeah, take the hint. It gets better, though. Um, a little information. Federal statistics show that Native Americans experience some of the highest per capita rates of violent victimization. What is that? Just call it violence of any racial or ethnic group in the United States. Yeah, and mostly it is intertribal or intra-tribal. And well, that's not saying I don't care about it, but we have to look into the causes. The shooters, two men were charged with first-degree murder. They have interesting names, interesting surnames. This man is B. Gay, and this man's surname is Fag, with a silent E, if I may. What are the chances of that? None. That's not coincidence. And a third man charged with lying. Um, his name is Joshua. There's another Bible name. It so happens that Joshua is also basically synonymous with Jesus. And neither Joshua nor Jesus married. They hung around with a lot of men. So the gay and fag theme is linked to Joshua. Coincidence? Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidence theory very much. Let's go to New Mexico. I think it's has North America's largest reservation.
Reservations, poverty, casinos.
Yes, casinos.
Native Americans are America's most misunderstood people. Okay.
Oh, come. We can't. How do you evaluate who is most misunderstood? Hmm. How many people misunderstand me? Maybe not enough. Um, One moment. I have a few clips to share from this little documentary. Trying to navigate my own work. All right, 6:15. There's a Navajo man stopping to speak to the U.S. Caucasian young man who's doing this documentary.
We're savages like your ancestors trained my ancestors to be.
We're not savages like your ancestors portrayed our ancestors to be. Well, this is a gross generalization. My ancestors said nothing about your ancestors. We have to keep in mind that it's not all people of European descent who are responsible, allegedly, for what happened to Native Americans. If anyone, it's the aristocracy who came. They had the power and the weapons. And at worst, it's some pioneers, if you believe that. Sheriffs, not my ancestors.
We're the ones that taught them how to survive in our country.
Is that so? As he speaks from his SUV powered by gas, pumped from who knows where, dressed in his glasses and jacket and what is he still living off the land? No, he's living above the land on wheels. Living off the land is a messed up expression too. It should be living on the land, living with the land, maybe even better. Um, Another clip, 1324.
Remember when the Europeans came?
No, I don't remember. I wasn't there, and neither were you.
They came with diseases.
You can't prove that. That is the narrative, we are told.
They came with attention. And that's what my grandfathers, my Che's taught me, you know. This land, it's big, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful? No. What is your definition of beautiful? That is barren land, stripped of its life. Where are the buffalo that were once there? You could easily bring them back. Just watch a few videos online and see that you could even green this place, turn it into a savanna. But alas, like much of the world, we're not doing anything with the land. We're not rehabilitating it, greening it. Too busy driving cars and hiding behind sunglasses.
But it's just been taken advantage of. All the resources, all the minerals. And
Yeah, those cows are not doing the land much good either. Um, but enough. Let's skip ahead. There is an admirable elder who will speak. There we go.
Classification force. So controlled by the federal government, that's the problem. The nation declared itself to be sovereign, but they rely on federal.
The Navajo Nation declared itself sovereign, but they depend on
Assistance all the time.
federal assistance.
Health center, a lot of programs, social programs.
Stop those schools, stop those health centers, stop the social programs. Oh, I know, I'm sure he actually would consider doing that if he could.
To say a nation, being a nation, having its own, like I said, they're getting there.
Well, yeah, he does understand that to call the Navajo Nation a nation is rather nonsense, since the Navajo people are dependent on federal handouts. I'll let him speak again a little further ahead. 1430.
True. And what would happen if it were to go away?
Our whole idea of sustaining it's different. We live off the land. In my earlier childhood, our grandfather used to farm and used to provide food to the school that was operating here. But that was forgotten. All our farm areas are gone. But
All our farm areas are gone.
culturally, we're going through a change, I'm sure.
They're using farm
Well,
this next
that-
change.
Yes.
And now
That was an understatement. We're going through a change. Yeah, going through ruination. Ruination. Uh-huh. Well, that's enough for current news. I wanted to look at some history regarding indigenous peoples, starting with the Haida people of the northwest coast of Canada. Is that where it is? I'm not sure. It's yeah, near British Columbia. The Haida. Let's have a look at this starting here. Start with a picture. Yeah, this is a picture taken in 1840, was it? 1878, of course, when cameras, black and white, were in use. We can see these totem poles. Well, they were not carved with stone axes. They were not carved with and cut with the jawbones of a moose. No, these totem poles were made with metal tools provided by the Europeans. I doubt this part of the Haida culture existed before Europeans provided metal tools. And I have more doubts than that. According to the Haida canon of oral histories, all fake. I have read enough oral histories to dismiss them all as creations of the literate aristocracy that rules this world. Archaeological findings, right. Find me archaeological findings that support the notion that Haida ancestors lived along glaciers and were present at the time of the arrival of the first tree. What on earth does that even mean, the arrival of the first tree? And good luck trying to live beside a glacier. This is utter nonsense. Did the glaciers even make it to the west coast islands of British Columbia? Nah. I have doubts about glaciers and the Ice Age. It's all nonsense designed to make us live in fear of Mother Nature and her unpredictable, crazy ways, wiping out half of North America with glaciers. BS. The smallpox epidemic of 1862, of course, has to be discussed. It used to interest me a lot. Then I realized, well, there's no evidence of it, and I'm tired of hearing about imaginary pandemics. You can guess what inspired me to be dismissive of pandemics. All right, and a few more things to look at. Um, the writers of our history and of indigenous history are obsessed with war narratives, love to suggest that we've always been fighting each other, when in reality something much worse is the truth, as you will know if you've listened to some of my other mind shares. Well, warfare. Prior to contact with Europeans, other indigenous communities regarded the Haida as aggressive warriors and made attempts to avoid sea battles with them. Sea battles in canoes. They think we're really stupid and gullible. Yeah, well, you will be if you always assume that you're reading the truth and never exercise your mind and think. No, you can't wage sea battles in canoes. analyses of skeletal injuries dating from the late Archaic period, well, a few thousand years ago, I guess, or two, and so on, show that Northwest Coast nations, particularly in the north, where most Haida communities were situated, began more frequently engaging in battles of some sort. What were they fighting for? There was a huge continent for a lightly, yeah, for very few people, if they were there at all. Um, this rise in the incidence of battles also correlates with the erection of the first defensive fortifications in Haida communities. Yeah, they don't have enough proof yet, but okay, it's here. Fortifications, topic of my previous mind share. These fortifications continued to be in use during the 18th century as evidenced by Captain James Cook's discovery. What? You mean as evidenced by Captain James Cook's book, a little journal he wrote, a log, Captain James Cook, otherwise known as just Captain Cook. That double C initial represents the number 33. And James Cook, now we have JC, Jesus Christ. Reminds me of Christopher Columbus, another double C 33. Yes, they do weave their codes in all their lies. I don't think in order to tell themselves that they did give us fair warning. No, it's to give themselves another reason to laugh at us for not noticing that they are lying. The missionary William Collison describes having seen a Haida fleet of around 40 canoes. Yeah, this is almost straight out of Homer's Iliad with its alleged fleet of was 800 ships, Greek ships that went to imaginary Troy. 40 canoes, sure. War canoes, they call them. Medicine men were often brought along raids or before battles to destroy the souls of enemies and ensure victory. Yes, in addition to being warlike, they were also damned superstitious. I don't know why Native people aren't offended by this history, this portrayal of their past. I would be if I were them. The Haida used the bow and arrow until it was replaced, etc. Okay, so they fought in canoes on the open sea with bows and arrows. Reminds me of the story we are given about the Mongols riding horses and somehow being able to accurately shoot arrows while riding horses. Good luck shooting arrows while standing in a canoe on an ocean of all places. An ocean. I mean, in the north of British Columbia, you fall into that ocean, and that's not a pleasant swim. How many seconds do you have before pneumonia? Well, let me share some slides. This is an illustration of a battle, alleged battle between native tribes on Lake Superior, another lake that's, well, another body of water that is so cold you have seconds, not minutes, to get out. And somehow I doubt the claims that native peoples were excellent swimmers. Yeah, there they are with bow and arrow. As a student of mine asked, how did this work? Did one side uh, inform the other side or invite the others, their rivals, their enemies, to meet them on Lake Superior at such and such a time, in such and such a place, so that they could have a battle? For what reason would they insist on having this battle on nearly freezing water instead of on land? It's just mockery. Ridiculous. And so are the stories about naval battles between European nations. None of that happened. Um, AI couldn't find any evidence that there were any battles on Lake Superior in in the year 1800. One moment. Here's a painting illustration illustrating the most famous battle between the colonial power and Native Americans. This is the Battle of Little Bighorn, allegedly from 1903, allegedly waged in 1903. We have somehow, of course, those native people, those crafty Native Americans managed to get their hands on guns. How curious. Were they supplied by the proto-CIA? And what does this man think he's doing? Wearing like a beaver fur hat? And for the rest, going nearly naked, bareback, no saddle? Well, this fur hat is winter wear. And well, apparently it's summertime. He's mostly naked. So you try to make sense of this. Good luck. And well, there's not much else to say about this one. Looks like chaos, doesn't it? Where are the enemies? Oh, they're over there. Yes, with guns and they're standing. But anyway, this one is even more absurd, also depicting the strangely named battle, Little Bighorn. Can't quite decide if it's a bighorn or a little one. Bighorn, maybe the name of a chief. I don't know. It's a funny name for a battle. And it's a funny depiction of that battle. We have I guess it's the Navajo. I don't know. I don't really know which tribe was involved. Some of the Native Americans are carrying guns. I don't see a bow and arrow in this depiction. This one has a handgun. These are rifles. And this one is an axe, tomahawk. And the majority appear to be carrying what, for lack of better word, I have to call staffs, the kind carried by Catholic popes, maybe cardinals, the kind held by saints in paintings. What are they doing carrying staffs? And, these hooked objects, maybe they are pointy at the bottom, but not sure how they are supposed to function in war. or in a battle. Um, Originally these things were for shepherds. You you set it around the neck of a sheep and direct it. Oh, there. We do have someone with a bow and arrow. Okay. Now, the other absurdity here is, of course, such men armed with bows and arrows and guns do not fight in close quarters like this. Uh, Maybe especially not if they're on horseback. This makes no sense. Well, of course, you could say they were ambushed. Ambushed, so they had to shoot like this. Yeah, I don't buy it. You always send someone ahead to check if you could be ambushed. You don't send your entire team force through a narrow passage where they will be ambushed. Oh well. Supposedly the colonial power, the federal government, I don't know. The white people lost this battle. A huge loss. Although it looks in this picture as if, yeah, I guess they were ambushed. Whatever. Here's a family photo, allegedly, of who is that here? An Anishinaabe family. This elder Susan Jefferson's family. Three of them are marked with names, and they all have the surname King. That might be another Masonic, Jesuit, whatever joke. King means kine, cattle. Um, this person appears to be, they all seem to be part of this one family, and yet this person looks very European. This one could be European. This one could be European. Yeah, all of them could be European. Let's see, and the costumes are rather odd. This with flowers. I didn't know that was part of Native American aesthetics. They look like aprons, like the kind Masons wear. Well, they're very decorated, except for this man or woman. Could be woman. Is that a dress? Who knows? Yes, indigenous people. We're all indigenous people, but apparently in Europe, the Samis have a monopoly on that word. They are the only indigenous ones. Lovely teepee here, like the kind you would we associate with North American Plains Indians. Um, the teepee, the Sami. Well, how long, how useful is this teepee? Assuming they needed a hole in the top for smoke, the smoke produced by their fires. That's a huge hole. Um, and these things look so makeshift, so badly constructed. Um, any wind over, any wind greater than the speed of a man running would tear this, would send this teepee flying, and that one, and all of them. In northern Scandinavia, would you survive in this construction? I don't think so. Would you choose to live there with such so-called homes? I don't think so. So that's why I'm suspicious of the entire indigenous narrative, especially in northern climates. Doesn't make much sense. This is, where is this? somewhere in the US, Minnesota, another rather cold place in the wintertime. This is an even worse construction. And these men, with their European hats, are they supposed to be indigenous? I don't think so. They look a little swarthy, but maybe they've been outdoors every day for a year. What I seriously doubt they did anything, they spent any time in this ridiculous structure in Minnesota in wintertime. Another observation I want to make is that I think all photos and paintings of indigenous chiefs and men portray them as clean shaven, and I just don't know how they managed that. And when that became part of their culture, why are indigenous people always, and soldiers, mind you, always freshly shaven? Hmm. There you go. 4 authentic photographs. Supposedly, this is that authentic? Did someone really, what disease did this man suffer? Or is this AI before AI became public? Well, they're all very nicely shaven. Despite wrinkles, they managed perfectly shaven. And let's have a look. Let's examine the words we use to describe or to identify original peoples. Original. The word Aboriginal, uh, typically only applied to Australian indigenous peoples. It's a strange word. If they are the original people, why not just call them the originals? Why the originals? Is it a joke? Is it meant to suggest they were not? The prefix originates from Latin and primarily means away from or etc. But yeah, if you're away from the original or from the original, that means you're not the original. It's like normal and abnormal. Abnormal is the opposite. Yeah, how they play with our words. Indigenous people. The word indigenous. Could it be related to the word indignation? Indignation. From the Old French, indignation, fury, rage, disrespect. Or directly from the Latin, the older Latin, indignation, displeasure. Mm-hmm. Um, and it stems from indignare, regard as unworthy, something to be angry or displeased at, unworthy. You are indigenous, you are unworthy. That is the etymology, that is the word game, that is the joke. Not a nice joke, of course. They don't make nice jokes. Maybe I can do something with dig, that word dig, yeah, from the underground human farms. Naive, the word native. What is its origin? Well, it's related to the word naive. Isn't that nice? Natural, simple, unsophisticated, artless, even foolish, innocent. And yes, they do make the connection for us, native. So none of these words are actually respectful. They live on reservations in Canada and the US. Interesting word, reservations. My students often say, does that mean they have tables at restaurants reserved? Joking, joking, but it's a curious word. Reserve means to keep back or store for future use, as the Canadian natives are being used today for political reasons. But even beyond that analysis, the root of reserve is serve. So looks like the native, indigenous, aboriginal people are re-serving someone's agenda. They are serving a purpose. Not the purpose they'd like, I'm sure. And let's go to Manitoba. Oh, we'll be there later. One moment as I switch to my notes. Doing some juggling with sources of information. Eventually I will enter these slides, the information in my slides and notes into my books very soon, even though my books are already too big to be, well, too big to not frighten readers, perhaps. Um, I went to the wrong place. No worries. I will read. The Haida. We're finished with that. Oh, a little bit more about the Haida. In his journal, Columbus wrote of meeting the Arawak natives in the Bahamas in 1492 and noted that after their first contact, Columbus and his men returned to their ships, and the natives followed after in canoes and by swimming. No, they didn't want to see him leave, and they swam and canoed after them. Please don't go. Who writes this? Who wrote that BS? Next, when Columbus landed in Cuba shortly later, he wrote that more than 1,000 natives came out to greet his ship in canoes. And besides these, there came about 500 swimming, for they had no canoes. Even though Columbus' ships were anchored almost a league from shore. Well, the Spanish League is a little over 4 kilometers. Well, a 4-kilometer swim across open water is impossible for a human being who is not swimming regularly. And we have no reason to believe that Cuban natives or any other natives needed to swim long distances regularly. Also, a 50-meter long ship viewed from 4 kilometers away, that's over 4,000 yards, would appear quite small to the naked eye, roughly equivalent to the size of a 5-centimeter object held at arm's length, or the width of a smartphone held at arm's length. So are we to believe that native people could bear, they saw this object in the distance, had no idea who was on board, but were so curious they decided 500 of them would swim out for 4 kilometers to see what it was. All right. They'll tell us whatever they want. Next, let's go back to Canada. There is a tribe there known, believe it or not, as the Blood Tribe. The Kainai Nation, spelled Kainai, but it's pronounced actually Kenna. Reminds me of Canaan of the Bible. Cain had the blood on his hands from murdering his brother. The Blood Tribe's name was given on account of its warlike bloodshedding reputation. Yes, shedding the blood of its brothers. Of course, that's all nonsense. Plains Cree called it Kanai, something in their language which means stained with blood or bloodthirsty, cruel. So, so yes, the English decided, well, let's call them the Blood Tribe. It's all fiction. The Blood Tribe has a population of nearly 13,000 members back in 2024. The Blood 148 Reserve or Reservation in Alberta, Canada, is the largest First Nations reserve by land area in Canada. It covers approximately 350,000 acres, making it the largest in terms of surface area, despite being over 1,400 square kilometers. Court rulings indicate potential for further expansion based on land treaty entitlements. In 2019, a federal court ruling found the Blood Tribe was entitled to an additional 425 square kilometers of land based on Treaty 7. That's a shitload of land for 12,000 people. What are they doing with all that land? I am desperately jealous, envious. I have no land. They have so much land. Would they share with me? I think not. Why don't they also raise buffalo, elk, and deer? I mean, before 2019, that was the year when they decided to start raising buffalo and elk and deer. The Blood Reserve is known for its abundance of these animals now. Well, good for them. Um, but it is a kind of laziness to just populate land with game that you will hunt with guns or sell for profit. No one seems interested any longer. No native people seem interested in farming. I once had a student who had to write an essay on the struggles and possible solutions for First Nations peoples of Canada, and I suggested, why not suggest that Indigenous people imitate the Amish? Apparently, they've been surviving quite well without government support for hundreds of years. They build their own barns, homes. They provide their own food, make their own clothes. They are independent. But no, the young man's teacher said that wouldn't fit the indigenous culture. Nope. Well, interestingly, since we're talking about words, as well as, well, mostly words, talking is words. Manitoba, another province in Canada. Canada is the country with the most lakes and the most surface area covered by fresh water. And turns out that Manitoba is the province with the largest percentage of its surface area covered by fresh water. Lakes make up approximately 15.6% of its surface. That is curious because One moment. So we go back to my Manitoba slide. The word Manitoba has, of course, the English word man in it. And the rest of that word, Itoba, turns out means water in this African language, Kinyarwanda. What are the odds of that being a coincidence? The province with the most surface area covered with water has in its name a word that means water. And Ojibwe, well, the word way is English. Turns out Ojib is Uzbek for strange. Strange way, isn't it true that the Ojibwe way is rather strange? Unbelievable. We have also in Canada the Métis, a distinct Indigenous people in Canada recognized under the Constitution Act and so on. I think Métis are uh, half breeds, if I may say, half French and half First Nations, Indigenous people. Métis. But it's not a French word. It doesn't mean, and what does it actually mean? Métis. Well, turns out that this word has also exists, I should say, in Greek mythology. Métis means wisdom, skill, or craft in the ancient Greek religion and mythology. The pre-Olympian goddess of wisdom, counsel, and deep thought was Métis. She is notable for being the advisor and first wife of Zeus, the king of the gods. She helped him free his siblings from their father's stomach, right, from time. Um, Curious. Métis. And mate. Was that another pun, crypto pun, mate? Because Métis are mixed race. They mated. I don't know. Welcome to Broken Head, Ojibwe Nation. Who gave the Blood Tribe and really Broken Head? It's a little baffling that people who want respect adopted these names. Broken Head sounds like a cannibal joke. And here is an Ojibwe clown, again with these flower patterns and a strange looking apron-like clothing, garment, and a gun. He's a clown, but he's supposed to be a clown. Well, anyone who wears feathers on their head or horns is, in my mind, a bit of a clown, dehumanizing themselves. Oh, it's a bit too early for that. I wanted to share something else before I wrap this up. Yes, I may be done with my notes. A little reading from my book on this subject, my monstrous Encyclopedia Comedia. It really is, truly is monstrously huge. As you can see, this is a PDF, 619 pages, full of photographs illustrating interesting material. But let's go, if I can find it again. This part about native people. Uh-huh. All those horns. Well, one moment. There we go. I'm in the wrong chapter entirely. Grow up and be a man. Yes. Well, this gives you a quick view of what I have in this oversized book. Here we go. Yeah, all these clean-shaven native people, sometimes dressed like Europeans. Pocahontas' portrait. What do we have here? Mongols, our true identity. Here we go. The Inuit hunting from their kayaks. All these rather dubious photographs. This gentleman somehow shot a bear in the ass and in the belly chest area somehow. Um, Nearly there. Our land. And yeah, there's something here with words. What if indigenous tribes were planted in the intemperate North during the 1800s by Europeans who gave them their languages, all manufactured, metal tools and pots, needlecraft, myths and legends, and more? Now, in the 2000s, we see how easily our culture is manufactured for us by men who control education, legislation, and the media. And we can guess that our religions were manufactured for us by the ruling class. So perhaps indigenous cultures and histories were also manufactured. Perhaps. Let's stop being respectful if being respectful means not asking serious questions. Why should we respect cultures that respect men who wear feather headdresses and bullhorns and name themselves sitting duck, running deer, leaping rabbit, and goose egg? It's embarrassing. But what culture isn't embarrassing in one way or another? In the far north of Canada, one tribe bears the name Dog Rib. Is that respectful to dogs and to the tribe? How did indigenous people savor dog ribs as my contemporaries savor the ribs of cattle and pigs? And what about the funny names we have for their shelters? Igloo, teepee, and wigwam. Loo is British for toilet. Pee, TP, say no more, and wig, three English words, two of them closely related. And coincidentally, a wigwam looks like a large wig. A messy one, perhaps. What about the remaining fragments? Ig, tea, and wam. Ig from igloo. Well, wam or vam is Hindu for vomit, and some of these wigwams do look like wigs with vomit. T or T is Yoruba, meaning of, therefore of P, TP, it means of P. And ig from igloo is from the language of the Igbo people of southern Nigeria. Nigeria, India, and Yoruba, Africa. All tropical places. Coincidence? Is it a joke for these people of the North? Lastly, the word Inuit is another bilingual compound word. Nuit, nuit, is French for night, and in is English. The word translates into in night. The Inuit, Inuit, live at latitudes that experience uniquely long nights during the winter months. Is that coincidental? Well, enough. There is so much reason to be suspicious. So many reasons if we just look and study our words, our environment, architecture, shelters, paintings, photographs. Plenty of reasons to be suspicious. So let's stop there. I want to, yeah, I did have something else to share, didn't I? Where are my slides? Oh dear. There we go. The clown. Not so funny when clowns hold guns. But native clowns were not funny, really. I did study the subject in university, as I do love comedy, and I was a bit disappointed. Well, if you're interested in more, feel free to contact me. I still only have PDFs available, but they are more than a good deal. And perhaps one day I'll abridge these things and offer people the chance to buy paper copies. Let me know if that's what you want. It is possible to use Lulu to publish, print, and mail directly to you. I won't even need to do it myself. Not a good idea to mail from Mexico. They do have a habit of throwing on extra charges at the border.